Saturn is getting ready to go back into Aries as of February 13th, 2026, which means if you are born with Saturn in Aries in your natal chart, you are going to be having your Saturn return. Whether you are in your late 20s having a Saturn return, your first, or you are in your late 50s having your second Saturn return, or God bless, in your late 80s having your third Saturn return, there are choices to be made. And these choices are all on you. Now, this is not something to be nervous about, scared of, but we are going to discuss how you can best use this energy so that you can make choices that support your journey, where you're at now in your life, where you'd like to see yourself going, and how you can use Saturn in Aries specifically to do that. Let's discuss. So welcome to the channel, or welcome back. My name is Stella Wilde, and in today's episode of Coffee and Cosmos, we are going to discuss your Saturn return in Aries and the choices that maybe you're going to be dealing with over the next couple of years. Saturn is going back into Aries as of February 13th and will stay in the sign until April 12th, 2028. And yes, Saturn brings our attention to commitments. But before we can commit, we got to make a decision. So that is the focus of today's Coffee and Cosmos. And yes, you may be asking the very question that is on this mug: what am I doing with my lives? Which was the focus of another episode of Coffee and Cosmos. I'll leave a link to it in the description of the video. But yes, you can be asking yourself that question, whether it's your first, second, or third Saturn return. So Saturn, yes, is about commitments. It's about time. It is about energy, investments. It is about ledgers, spreadsheets, how we are investing and using our energies. Saturn can, yes, be about patience, the long game, and it can be about sometimes blockages, but more like, I would say, an energetic check. Like, are you sure you really want this? Is this the best thing for you to be investing your energy in? So again, the agency is always with you. It's about you making choices. Saturn can say, let's get serious about making this commitment, but it's always your choice of how you're going to use the energy and what you're going to commit to. Now, Saturn in Aries is interesting because it is not at its best placement in Aries. Aries is a lot about fire, momentum, impulsiveness. It is about growth, spring, awakening, new life. Saturn is about cold, dark, damp, winter, taking time, not rushing. So these things, the qualities of Saturn are kind of diametrically opposed to the natural inclinations of Aries energy and fire. So Saturn in Aries doesn't mean you're doomed. Okay, if you were born with Saturn Aries, you are not doomed. But it means you really need to take a look at how you are working with this energy. Okay, so sometimes paradoxically, Saturn in Aries people can almost run away from commitments, especially if this is your first Saturn return. Okay, so maybe up to this point in your life, your late 20s, you haven't been willing to commit to anything. Because Aries likes to play the field. It's a lot like Sagittarius, right? Aries likes to go on different adventures. Let's see. But then Aries gets bored. And so sometimes they impulsively start something, Aries energy, but they don't always complete and finish. Can they complete and finish? Yes, they can. But they have to remain very focused and disciplined usually, unless they have other energies going on in their natal chart, like Earth placements, like especially if they have Mercury and Taurus as an example, okay? But the point is that Saturn in Aries is about maturity. It is about growing up. I mean, Saturn in general is about maturity and growing up. So Saturn return in Aries, especially the first one. I will get to the second one in a minute, okay? But the first one especially is like, all right, grow up. What have you been running away from in terms of responsibilities, especially to yourself? Aries is about the self. It is about independence, autonomy, what you want in your life. And yes, because Saturn can sometimes be, delays and blockages, but have those been self-imposed? Perhaps. Maybe they have come from the outside world. Perhaps. This is just general discussion of this energy. So it can be, yeah, you know what? I've been kind of faffing around. What am I going to really sign up and commit to and not let go of at the first sign of, oh, it didn't immediately manifest? It's Aries, right? No patience. So the decision at your first Saturn return in particular is about making a commitment to, and again, I don't want to be over dramatic, but really the next 30 years of your life. All right. Because what you choose now, it is all on you. Only you can decide this, because we're talking about your life. And we're not saying you have to have a 30-year plan. All we're saying is that what you are committing to, is this something that you see yourself growing into over the next 30 years, mastering? That's very Saturn. And this depends on the Saturn placement in your chart, which house it's in. Okay, so if you want to book a personal reading with me, we can, go over that. I can go over that for you. But if you know the house that your Saturn is in, this is important, because it is about that. So as an example, let's say your Saturn is in your third house. Aries is your third house. Okay. So, and this is your first Saturn return. It can be about making your mind up to commit to maybe some sort of communication skills, learning new things. Maybe you're deciding to go back to grad school or learn something new to step into a new career. These types of things. So it does depend on the house placement, but it is really, you're setting yourself up for the next 30 years of growth, of perseverance, of lessons, of maturity. And then when you come to your second Saturn return in your late 50s, you take stock of what you have done the previous 30 years. What seeds did you plant? How did they grow? Are you happy with that? How do you evolve into then the next level of Saturn, which can be about legacy? This at your second Saturn return. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be leaving behind? What was your life purpose with that particular Saturn placement and the seeds that you planted at your first Saturn return? How did they pan out? Are you happy with the results or not? And I just want to also say this, Saturn, as I said, is a planet of maturity. And sometimes, people get to their late 50s. I mean, 50s in general, maybe even over 40, but we're talking about Saturn return here. So you get to your second Saturn return and it can be like, oh, now life is over for me. No, it is not over for you. Because as we know, there's been a lot of crazy dramas with layoffs and life shifts and different things going on. If you're on the precipice of major shifts and change in your late 50s, especially, you may feel like, well, what do I do now? But Saturn can help you redefine those skills and things you already learned and matured into from the past 30 years. It might just look different this time, but it doesn't mean you're washed up, life is over, end of the story. No, it does not mean that. If anything, if you planted the seeds your first Saturn return, you stepped into the growth, the maturity, the patience, you really built something, Aries. Unique. You built something yourself, independence, autonomy, something you're proud of. This second Saturn return is like, honey, it's a piece of cake. You can do that again. You're just going to do it maybe in a little bit of a different way. So it's not over at a second Saturn return at all. So the thing with Saturn is that it can almost feel like it's limiting our options, which in a way it is, right? Because it could sometimes bring up some sort of blockages, detours, roadblocks, etc. Because it's again testing you. It's very Saturn, testing you to see if you have the patience to stick with that and get through the roadblock or find a way around it, or, do your Aries thing and bang your head against the roadblock until it smashes and then you can move along. Or it's testing you to see if that's really what you want. So, Aries is impatient. Aries wants results right away. And Saturn's going to say, not so fast. Let us test things. Let us make sure your commitment is there. Things are not going to be built in a day as much as you would like them to be built in a day. And if you've been avoiding responsibility, choosing and making a commitment, Saturn's going to bring those choices and that energy right in front of your face. And yes, it can feel like a winnowing, like the playing field. If Aries wants a big field to run around and play in, it's going to be like the field starts narrowing. The field of vision needs to narrow and focus on, like that phrase I like, the one true thing that you can commit to growing over time, especially the next 3 years, approximately 2.5, of this Saturn return. Because as I said, like whether you're in your late 20s or your late 50s, you're planting those seeds for the next 30 years. I mean, God hope, sorry, I got ink on my hands. God hope and help us that we make it to our third Saturn return. So, Aries, as I've been saying, can be a little impulsive. It can be the urge to just burn it all down. And if you're feeling that right now, that's good information to have about yourself. If you're feeling restless, impatient, I just want to burn it all the F down. I can't stand this. There's so much bullshit out there. I've done a lot of videos about, some bullshit. I'll leave all the links, all the links below. If you're impatient with the fakery, the phonery, if that's a word, it's not, but, the ridiculousness, maybe you're tired of your own bullshit, quite frankly. You could be just like, I'm tired of waffling around. I really do need to make a decision. Then this transit can absolutely help you do that. So Aries sometimes works in impulsive bursts, and then sometimes it loses interest and just gives up. So that's not how to use this energy. You want to think about time under tension, which is a phrase actually from Les Mills' Body Pump that I picked up along the way in my various gym classes, but it is about the sustained burn. You do lower weights, but higher repetitions. And just when you're feeling it, like especially those bicep curls, right? You're feeling it to start to burn, you stick with it. It's time under tension. And that's very Saturn. So think about that as you're going through your Saturn return. Where am I? Yes, maybe feeling the burn, but I'm not just going to impulsively burn everything down. Maybe I started something, the results didn't quite come in my time frame, and I got impatient and I just said F it and I'm burning it all down. That is not going to help you. So a Saturn return can feel like a lot of pressure because Saturn is a heavy energy. But it doesn't mean that you can't have happiness or it can't be joyful, etc. It's about reframing. And it absolutely can be about the eye on the prize, as the saying goes. So when you know what you're working toward, you can sustain yourself. You can sustain the motivation by knowing your why. That is the key. And to maintain that discipline in some form or fashion for yourself in whatever commitments you're making with your Saturn return energy. And discipline, that word gets a bad rap, because, it's not easy. Discipline's not easy. It gets easier the more you do it, though. And I would say the way you can work with this energy is to have some sort of routine for yourself in whatever you're trying to choose and change in your life. Give yourself deadlines. Give yourself task lists. This is very Saturn. enlist the aid of a mentor, somebody who's older and wiser that can help you also, who's been through the thing that you want to achieve. Listen to their advice. You don't always have to take it, of course, or refashion it to suit your situation, but that can also be very helpful for you. Because Aries energy can be very headstrong, independent. I'm not going to listen to anybody. You might benefit actually from listening to an older, wiser, experienced person. So keep that in mind. So again, not to be totally overdramatic, but our first Saturn return does really set us up for the next 30 years of our life. And you find a lot of people make big life decisions at this time because playtime is over. The decade of the 20s, when you're learning, exploring, trying new things, and life is kind of an adventure, Saturn comes along with your Saturn return and says, all right, grow up already. And people make decisions about getting married, going back to school, buying a house, maybe moving geographically to a very different place than where they grew up, having a child, all of these types of things that are big commitments and that take your life in a very focused new direction. Yes, over the next 30 years. The thing is, too, is we make the best decisions we can at the time with the information we have. And so if you're feeling, oh my God, how am I going to make a decision that's going to affect the next 30 years of my life? Hold up, slow up, calm down, calm down. It's more like point yourself in the direction you want to go. What is important to you to build in your life? And that is going to look different for every person. And it does depend on the house that Saturn is in for you. Okay. But that's the best way I can look at that. And then because you choose, because you make that commitment, you see that life will move in certain directions. Life will meet you halfway. Things will start coming in that particular narrow field of vision that you have selected to commit to. And really the same thing happens in your late 50s at your second Saturn return. Because it's like, okay, been there, done that. Is that still working for me? What is my legacy? How do I want to change that? How do I want to spend the next 30 years of my life, God willing that I get 30 more years? How do I say that chapter is over for me? Maybe you bought a house at the first Saturn return. The second Saturn return, you're like, you know what? I don't want that house anymore. I want to go travel. I want to do X, Y, Z. Or you know what? I chose that career at age 30, but now I'm just like, forget it. I'm out because I want to do other things with my energy. And that's perfectly okay. So it absolutely can feel like a very renewed, fresh start for you in your second Saturn return as well. But the same thing still holds. It is the discipline, the choice, the focus, and the realization that it's just one foot in front of the other, time over tension. Keep building that muscle memory of your discipline and your focus and the actions that you take on a regular basis that build toward your dream of what you want to accomplish in this area of your life. Saturn rewards hard work. I've seen various things where people are like, oh no, I never got my Saturn rewards, blah, 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 blah. Especially on X. I love just going on X and reading a whole bunch of stuff. But I have seen disgruntled posts about, oh, that idea that Saturn rewards you, that is a farce. That never happened to me. And I would say to that, well, did you actually do the work? Did you? And Saturn rewards aren't always immediate. Sometimes you see, yes, you may get your reward after Saturn leaves that house. You may get that reward 5 or 10 years later because you made that choice at that time of your Saturn return. It happens in different ways for everybody. But if you don't choose, if you don't do the work, That's how this Saturn return will fail you, because you're failing yourself. You're not taking action in the way that Saturn would like you to, in terms of committing, focusing, being disciplined, not impulsive, and staying the course and not giving up. Aries has a lot of grit. I mean, it is a sign that is brave, that absolutely can move mountains when it focuses, when it follows through over the longer haul, the longer term. So if you want your Saturn return to be the best it can be, I suggest, because I never tell anybody what to do, but I suggest that you tap into some of the things, you think about what I've said in this Coffee and Cosmos chat, and let me know in the comments how you're going to use these suggested recommendations for making your Saturn return the best it can possibly be, because the choice is yours. It's all on you. I can tell you the conditions, the general energies, of what this might look like. But ultimately, you must choose yourself, Aries, and you must choose something that is worth it to you, that will last and build for the long term, that has deep roots, and that wasn't built in a day. Because if it's built in a day, it has a shaky foundation. You want, again, time invested. Yes, there might be some tension along the way, because there's always tests. There's always, are you going to stick with this? Saturn wants to make sure, yes, you're really invested in this. And if you pass those tests, you don't give up, you stick in, you focus, you can build something great in your life in whatever house Saturn occupies for you. So yeah, what are you going to be doing with your life? According to your Saturn return, I would love to hear in the comments. Let's discuss if you know what house your Saturn is in, and maybe I'll throw out a few ideas. I will be reading every comment. So let me know. And again, if you want me to look at your personal astrology and give you some insight on this, I certainly can do that. You can book a soul shift reading with me. The link is in the comments. Love you guys. Take care. Thank you so much for being here today. Stella Wilde, signing out.